Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive right in with some seriously high energy today because we are tackling something that so many kids and honestly, a ton of adults too, really struggle with. We're talking about that intense, paralyzing fear of speaking, answering, or reading out loud in class. We're going to dig into the data, uncover what's really going on, and figure out how to unlock this anxiety loop for good.
So let me ask you a question. Why do some kids suddenly fake sick on presentation day? I mean, we've all seen it, right? Maybe you were even that kid. Out of nowhere, it's a mysterious stomach ache or suddenly they're running a fever. But what's actually happening beneath the surface here? Because it's not just, a dislike of homework. There is a very deep, fascinating psychological mechanism at play. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, Beyond Ordinary Shyness. We're looking at performance anxiety here.
Because we have to establish right away that we're dealing with something way more intense than just basic hesitation. There's a core difference. On one side, sure, you've got ordinary shyness, a little reluctance, maybe needing a minute to warm up to a crowd. But on the other side, we're looking at performance-type social anxiety. And this is a totally different beast. It's a profound, overwhelming fear of negative peer evaluation. We're talking genuine dread, actual physical symptoms, and active avoidance. It's not just about being quiet. It's a fear that actively impairs a child's ability to learn and participate.
Which brings us to Section 2, the anxiety loop, and exactly how this fear builds. To really understand this, put yourself in their shoes for a second. Imagine sitting at your desk. The teacher is scanning the room, and your internal monologue is just absolutely screaming, I'm going to mess up, they're going to laugh. Just anticipating that judgment acts like a tripwire. The second a child thinks this, their body gets flooded with intense physical arousal. It's a classic fight or flight response. And the tragic part? The child completely misreads this totally normal biological reaction as absolute proof that they're in actual physical danger. So how do they react to that perceived danger? Well, they rely on what clinical researchers call safety behaviors. These are just actions taken to lower their anxiety momentarily. But here's the catch, and it's a really big one. These behaviors completely prevent the child from ever learning that their feared catastrophe actually isn't going to happen. It's wild, right? These instinctual actions actually keep the fear alive because the child never gets the chance to realize they're actually safe. And what's really interesting here is just how ordinary these actions look in a classroom. We're talking whispering an answer, not raising your hand, physically shrinking down behind the kid in front of you, or faking that illness on presentation day. These aren't just quirky personality traits or bad behavior. They are safety behaviors operating in disguise to momentarily drop that anxiety. But every single time they do this, they're feeding that loop. So how do we fix it? Section 3, Breaking the Cycle and Building Confidence. Thankfully, our source data lays out some fantastic, highly structured, evidence-based interventions to help a child safely step out of this loop. The first tool is graded exposure. Think of it like a ladder. You wouldn't force a kid to jump to the top rung immediately, right? Step 1 might be incredibly low stakes, like just reading one sentence out loud to a parent at home. Step 2, maybe reading a whole paragraph. Step 3, eventually, is reading to the class. But the absolute key here is repetition. Each low-stakes step has to be repeated until it feels completely boring and routine before they're allowed to move up to the next rung. And doing that brings us to this vital internal shift. We literally have to change how they interpret their own body. Right now, for an anxious kid, a racing heart or a shaky voice means one thing: danger and impending failure. We've got to flip the script. We need to teach them that a racing heart actually equals normal performance energy. It just means you're ready, you're focused, your body is gearing up to do something really important. Reframing that physical arousal from panic to power is absolutely crucial. But listen, the child can't do this in a vacuum. Coordinating with the teacher is a must. The classroom needs to offer predictable, low-pressure ways to participate. A golden rule: never cold call a highly anxious child by surprise. No way. That triggers the panic instantly. However, and this is a super delicate balance, you also cannot let them opt out entirely. Which leads us directly to our most critical realization. Section 4, the danger of avoidance, and how it actually locks the fear in. As adults, parents, teachers, our most deeply ingrained instinct is to rescue a suffering child. When we see them terrified of speaking, we just want to make it stop immediately. But here is the hard truth drawn straight from the evidence. Total avoidance locks the fear in. Excusing a child from every single presentation or letting them stay perfectly silent all year might feel like the kindest thing to do in the moment. It relieves their immediate panic, for sure. but it completely guarantees that the fear will persist. Every single time we allow complete avoidance, we're literally feeding that anxiety loop. It's a really tough perspective shift for us as caregivers and educators, but we have to realize that true protection means helping them face their fears through those small, supported, graded steps we talked about. Now, one really crucial caveat before we wrap up. If this avoidance is severe, like we're talking a total refusal to speak in some settings, or full-blown panic, basic classroom strategies just aren't going to be enough. Consider a professional assessment for things like selective mutism or clinical social anxiety. Definitely don't try to diagnose this alone. But for the vast majority, those small, supported steps are the absolute key. So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. When we let a child entirely avoid the spotlight, are we actually protecting them, or are we just protecting their fear?